Let's go! LSU football fans, spring football is here. I'm giving you the 5 things you need to know, plus some bonus content at the end of today's video. And look, we look at LSU football deeply on this channel. So if you like this kind of commentary, subscribe. We got to get to 4,000 subs. Let's go! So point number 1, the LSU spring schedule itself. And you're looking at the practice dates right now. March 16th is the opening date. It's going to be a normal spring practice. Normally it's around 15-ish practices. Some days pads will be on. Some days they'll just be in helmets. I am more excited about this than I normally am. Number 1, we didn't have the season we should have had last year. And number 2, well, I'm just missing football really badly right now. So, one note, though, there still will be testing involved, which leads me to believe more players are going to miss practices. This is going to be a very conservative spring schedule. And normally it's like that anyway. They don't risk too much during this process. Point number 2, the actual spring football game set for April 17th. Now, we don't know too many details about this actual game. We don't know if it's going to be televised. We don't know if it's going to be open to the public. My best guess to both of those is yes and yes. We get to the most important group when it comes to spring football. And it's going to be a little bit different this year. So storyline number 3, the newcomers. Who is new to the program? Obviously, the guys you are most excited about are the early enrollees, led by Mason Smith, the 5-star defensive tackle out of Houma, Louisiana. Now, him enrolling early will help him fight to be a starter day 1. He definitely has that talent. But LSU obviously has a loaded defensive line group. I think safety is probably the one where a true freshman could start right away because, well, that was not a good position for LSU last year, and that shouldn't be the case. You know, when you have Jamal Adams and Grant Delpit year after year after year, those types of players, you know, LSU is DBU. We should never be struggling at safety. Now, Deion Smith is very interesting. Wide receiver is just so crowded. Garrett Nussmeier, obviously a quarterback, clearly comes in as the 4th-string guy. Garrett Dellinger, offensive line, that group is pretty crowded. Landon Jackson, Xavier Carter, both pass rushers, another really crowded position group. Then you have Bug Strong. Linebacker is also going to be wide open, and Peyton Todd, to me, is already the starting punter. So those are the early enrollees. Don't forget about Mike Jones. The players are one thing, but the real people that you should look out for when it comes to newcomers are the coaches. And honestly, these 3 names are the most important names throughout all of spring because they are installing their new systems. The offense, to me, is going to be a little bit easier simply because LSU is reverting back to what they did in 2019. The LSU offense really wasn't the problem. Now, they weren't necessarily great or overly efficient. They led the SEC in 3 and out, so it wasn't as if this offense was high-powered. I just don't think there is as much moving forward as there is on the defensive side of the ball, where Daronte Jones will be installing his new defense, which I do think will be a very good defense because you do have Eli Ricks, Derek Stingley, and a lot of talent. So obviously communication is something Daronte has preached, being violent, all those things. So this is going to be a very important period for those 3 guys in particular. Point number 4, returning starters. This is huge as well. Now, obviously the newcomers take up a lot of our, time and space because they are the newcomers, and we feel as if we know the returning starters pretty well. And if these experienced players are coming back, well, you shouldn't just automatically be given your starting spot. I think on the defensive side of the ball, that is definitely going to be the case because, we were talking about the newcomers a minute ago. Well, there are newcomers on all levels of the defense. The linebacker coach and the defensive line coach also new. So, look, Andre Carter and Blake Baker, they're not going to care about what you did last year on a defense that gave up 7+ yards per play in 8 of 10 games. So, look, you're really going to have to earn your starting spot. Then on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be interesting to see how James Craig shuffles the offensive line. Yes, you return all 5 of your starters, but you also return Cam Wire, who played a lot last season. And then, as we mentioned a few times now, Marcus Dumervil is a very talented prospect who was very patient last year. And then you have other names that are in that mix as well. So, look, the returning starters, I hope LSU fosters a really competitive atmosphere and doesn't just give starting spots back to the players from the year before. Point number 5, the quarterbacks. And this is the story every spring at every single school. How is the development of the game's most important position? And this quarterback race is wide open. In fact, this is the first quarterback race in quite some time that is this wide open. We knew Myles Brennan was going to be the starter. We knew Joe Burrow was going to be the starter, and we kind of knew Joe Burrow was going to be the starter before 2018 as well. We have no idea. So who can differentiate themselves the most in the spring? Now, this is still Myles Brennan week on the channel. We've done a lot of Myles Brennan content if you want to check that out. In my initial offensive depth chart piece, I do have Max Johnson listed as the starter. I do think Max and Myles have a little bit of an edge over TJ Finley, but that doesn't mean TJ Finley has been counted out of this race. And then you also have Garrett Nussmeier involved in this process as well. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the quarterbacks because we've talked so much about them in recent weeks, but it's going to be fascinating how they divvy up the snaps, how they go about determining who is the best quarterback to run the Jake Peetz and DJ Mangus offense. And a lot of that is going to come down to who the best receivers are as well. Which quarterbacks mesh with the best receivers on the team. That's going to be fascinating. So we'll see what happens. Look, all 3 of these guys are going to put in the work. I hope the receivers put in the same amount of output. I think that they will. And that's going to be huge during this spring football period. Let's go! So you get some bonus content at the end of today's video outside enjoying the beautiful weather. So, LSU Pro Day is March 31st, and it has never been more important for our Tigers to do well at the Pro Day because there is no NFL Combine. And some of the players that could participate are guys that actually opted out this year, like Kerry Vincent and Tyler Shelvin, and most notably Jamar Chase. Then you have Terrace Marshall and Rayson McMath and Torrey Carter and some other names there. So it's going to be a highly contested pro day. Jacoby Stevens, Jabril Cox, and the list goes on and on. Also, guys, you know how I feel about the schedule and how college football is structured. There is no preseason. There is no 7-on-7 or anything like that. So one thing I would change about spring football is including some offseason scrimmages, maybe some 7-on-7 or something, because, look, it gives coaches an opportunity to see players go up against other teams, which is actually how you evaluate players, because you can't really know how good a player is until they go up against someone that is not on their own team, right? So, look, I know some of you will say, well, you don't want to risk injury and all that. Everybody wins. So players, coaches, and most notably, you, the fan, because it gives us more football to watch. So there you go. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us on today's video. You guys know the live stream schedules and all that stuff. And, of course, if you want to see all of our content from Myles Brennan Week, you can go down below. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! What are we having tonight? I think... Are we doing tuna steaks tonight? I think we're doing tuna steaks. Let's go. Tuna steaks, let's go.